The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. It's Monday and we've been saying to you since last Friday we got a big show today. We're very excited because it's not every day at Autism Live that we get movie stars in the studio with us, but we have movie stars today. And that's really thrilling. I am Shannon Penrod, not a movie star. And I'm your host for today. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. And this is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And we are going to be with you for this next hour talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. You know that here on Autism Live, our mission is to provide you information and inspiration. And boy, we've got bucket loads of that today. Really thrilled to be here. This show is meant to be interactive. And so Traven, our fabulous Traven, is going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us today. If you want your thoughts, questions, concerns brought to light, please interact with us. And I will remind you while he's showing you these things that our homepage is autism-live.com. That is our new, fresh website, and you can go there and watch the live show, but you can watch clips and whole shows from the last 8 years. You can search topics. You can chat with us live. It's completely anonymous. The chat is at the very bottom of the page. Hey, you can check out our toy guide from last year. We're working on this year's right now. But the toy guide is at the top of the page. There's an infinite amount of information. You can search by guests. You can search by topic. You can search by question. There are lots of things to do on that website, but there's lots of ways for you to connect with us. I do want you to know that when you go to autism-live.com, one of the first things that will happen when you're about 6 seconds on the website, it will pop up and ask you if you want to subscribe. And when you subscribe, all that happens is you get a weekly viewer guide. It's just a little postcard. It's a snapshot that shows you who's going to be on the show. So you would know ahead of time that Joe Mantegna was going to be on the show today. You would have known if you had subscribed. So it's a great thing to do. We don't spam you. Occasionally we'll send you a survey about something like our toy guide, but we don't send you useless information. I'm allergic to that. We don't want to do that. But if you choose not to subscribe, that's fine too. You just click the little X and you can go back to watching the show. But we love you being here. You know, we have a lot of experts that are on the show, and we've got experts of a very particular fashion that are going to be on the show in just a few minutes. But I always like to remind you, I'm not an expert. I am a parent of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and I've now been covering autism in this sort of a format for over 10 years. So I like to say that I have an informed opinion, but I'm not an expert. So don't look to me for your expert answers. If you want an informed opinion, I'm happy to give you mine always, and I always have one. But so excited to welcome you all up here. You know, on this show, we always talk about the larger autism community. Here, we welcome absolutely everyone. Of course, we welcome individuals who are on the autism spectrums themselves, because this is what the core is, right? But around them, we have the parents and the practitioners and the teachers and the loved ones and the siblings and the boyfriends and girlfriends and husbands and wives, right? Who all care about them. That's what we all have in common. And guess what? We don't have a whole lot else else in common beyond that because everybody needs something different in this community. And that's one of the things I love about this big, beautiful spectrum of a community is that it isn't one size fits all, not in any way, shape, or form. But we welcome everyone who cares about individuals on the spectrum and their dignity and their right to be treated with dignity. That's really what we're here and about. Now, having said all of that, and I know those of you who've turned in for Joe Mantegna, he is coming. In fact, Joe Mantegna, Jessica Cavanagh, and Joanne Lara are going to be here in just a few minutes. But before that, we have business to take care of because on Monday morning, we like to start the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about. We give you the actual definition first, and then we promptly make as much fun of it as we can muster because usually that's about all we can do with it, right? And then we give you a working definition, which is a little bit less specific and sometimes makes the experts break out into hives. And that's just a secondary benefit from it because really the point is to give you a place to begin to understand these terms so that they can help you on your journey, whatever it is. So today's jargon term, boy, did we pick a doozy for today. Operant conditioning. Doesn't that just give you a headache in the frontal lobe? It does me. So let's take a look at what our actual definition is and see if we can't make some fun of this. Operant conditioning, the basic process by which operant learning occurs. Don't you love it when they don't define what operant is, but just use it again? Okay, so again, the basic process by which operant learning occurs, consequences, stimulus changes immediately following responses, result in an increased reinforcement or decreased punishment frequency of the same type of behavior under similar motivational and environmental conditions in the future. I need a chart and a dictionary and a psychologist. The what? And there's a lot of words in there that I understand, and I understand what operant conditioning looks like, and I can't make heads or tails of that definition. So let's move on now to our working definition. Let's see if we can't get a grasp here of what this is. Operant conditioning, a form of learning. Oh, okay, I can get that. Where an individual changes its behavior because of the consequences or results of a behavior. So we talk a lot on the show about a three-term contingency, that in every behavior, there's three things that happen. There's something that happens before the behavior, then there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence for the behavior, right? That's nature. That's everything. That's the animal kingdom, that's the plant kingdom, and that is us as human beings. Every behavior that you do starts out with, they call it the antecedent, I call it the ABCs of behavior, right? A for antecedent, B for behavior, C for consequence, ABC, right? Easy to remember. So antecedent is something that happens before, then there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence. This is already, it's in existence. It's just a very structured way of looking at behavior. But you and I and everyone on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, does this a million times a day. The example I always like to use, because we all do this at some point, is that you're sitting somewhere at some point in your day and you get up and turn a light on, right? So that's a three-term contingency. Something happened. Either your eyes began to strain and you couldn't see well enough what you were doing, or you walked in the room and it was dark and you couldn't see and you turned the light on, right? So that's the antecedent. The B was the behavior, but the consequence of turning the light switch on was that light flooded the room. And now you were happier, more comfortable. So operant conditioning takes that three-term contingency and says, if we change the consequence, and make it something that's really positive or something that's really negative, then does that change the not necessarily the A, but does it change the behavior? And what I love about the three-term contingency and what I love about ABA for autism is that they have done all the research on it and said, guess what? If we change the consequence and we change it to something positive, that with autism, we absolutely can change behavior. So if we put in a consequence on a regular basis that is something positive and meaningful to that individual, then we can change behavior. Now, why would you want to change behavior? Because there's some behavior that is not useful to an individual. It feels useful to them, it serves a purpose, but it doesn't help them to learn and to grow. So we always say it does have a purpose, right? Even when someone, because we're going to be talking about self-injurious behavior, let's talk about individuals who, for instance, will hit themselves in the head and why that is happening. There is a reason for it. It just isn't functional. It doesn't help them aside from that paycheck that they're getting, that it's meaningful. It's absolutely meaningful, the paycheck, but in the long term, it doesn't help them. And by the way, we all engage in short-term behaviors that feed the short term that don't help us in the long term. That's not just individuals on the autism spectrum, but especially when there are things that get in the way of somebody progressing and it is your child, that is behavior that it's worth looking at. What I love about good quality ABA is that it says they still have to get the paycheck. So whatever the paycheck was for hitting themselves in the head, that need needs to be met. We don't just say, well, let's stop that. We want to feed that behavior in a functional way. Sometimes people will hit themselves in the head because they see colors when they do it, right? Sometimes it will be because they have a pain in their head already, they have a headache, and if they hit their head, there is a momentary cessation of the pain. It goes away for just a second, right? So whatever the reason, we want to give them something that fulfills the need for what the hitting themselves in the head is, that is a more positive consequence than the other. And so we can use operant conditioning. And definitely operant conditioning is used in ABA, but I want to be clear that good quality ABA has said that we will use this, but what works is the positive consequence. So when somebody is working with your child, whether they be a 7-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 27-year-old, they're trying to identify what is meaningful to them and to give them that consequence as a result of doing a certain behavior. And then what we see is that that behavior occurs more often. What? And that's operant conditioning, okay? And if your head doesn't hurt now, don't be afraid if you don't get a jargon term the first time, because we'll talk about it again. And then when you see it, you'll go, oh, it's that thing. It's that thing that they were talking about. Oh, I see. They did that because they got this positive consequence. And then the lights will go off. Okay, we always have a question of the day. And on this very special day, it's no different than any other in that we're going to have a question for you. And we want to know about what motivates you to work hard. Because, things are hard a lot of times in life, and some people are really good at doing the things that are hard for them. Other people do things and they go, oh, I'm good at this, so that I'm going to work at because I already know I'm good at it. And then there are people who go, I can't, I'm not good at that, I'm not going to do it, right? But what motivates you when something's hard to keep doing it? Because that honestly is the core to everything, right? That's some form of reinforcement that you have going. It could be on the inside, it could be on the outside, but what is it that motivates you? It's a good question for you to know for yourself. And then if you're somebody who loves somebody on the spectrum or is working with somebody on the spectrum, we don't want to assume what makes them want to work hard, right? We want to ask in all the ways that we can. And by the way, you can ask that question of people with limited verbal capabilities. You absolutely can. It becomes key because I don't want to do something hard unless there's something in it for me, right? And what that something is a little bit different in each one of us. So ask yourself and then notice, is that true? Walk around with that for a day or two and go, hey, this is hard. Why am I keeping doing it? What's the paycheck in that? It's a really interesting way of looking at the world. We also always have a topic of the week. This week we have a new topic. And our new topic, I love this, is making it meaningful. I love when we have experts who come out and they talk about working with individuals on the spectrum, and it's hard. It's hard for the individual that if you're stuck in a pattern And let's face it, babies come out and they cry and we address it, right? They cry when they're wet, they cry when they have gas, they cry when they're tired, they cry when they're cold or hot. And we as parents and loved ones, we pick up the baby and we give them attention. And right around the age of 2, it starts to shift more towards them talking to us instead of crying, unless that doesn't happen, right? And the reason why for typically developing kids that they begin to start speaking more and more is because it's meaningful to them. Oh, if I say cookie, and cookie is relatively easy, they got to work their way up to it, right? But it's relatively easy for them. If I say cookie and you give me a cookie, I'm a 2-year-old, that's meaningful to me, right? Some of the things that are meaningful to typical 2-year-olds are not necessarily meaning to our kids on the spectrum. And then multiply that times however many years. So what's meaningful to a 14-year-old on the spectrum might be different than what's meaningful to somebody who isn't on the spectrum. But we're all people, and it has to be meaningful to us. So whenever we're helping to work with an individual who's on the autism spectrum, I think this has to be the first question we ask. And it has to be the second question, and maybe the next 22 questions, what is meaningful to that individual? But then as a parent, you got to stop and ask yourself, what is meaningful to me here? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing, and are they the things that I want? We need to make it meaningful, because sometimes you can get in the trenches and just be working away at something and go, I don't really know what we're doing here. That's not when we're in the meaningful. When you're in the, oh, I know exactly why I'm doing and I know exactly what I'm going for, there is something, I call it being in the wind tunnel, when you just, it feels right. And that's when it's meaningful. And it's going to look vastly different for you than it's going to look for anybody else. And this sort of segues into the guest that we have on the show today, because we've got the wonderful and talented Jessica Cavanagh, who is an actress and a writer, and she has written a really important play, Self Injurious Behavior, that has been recognized by many people. It just played in New York, and now a longer version of it is making its world premiere here in Los Angeles. It was so meaningful that a group of people got together and saw this and said, we want to help produce this. And one of those wonderful people is the actor Joe Mantegna. So we are going to be joined in just a second here by Jessica Cavanagh from Self Injurious Behavior. I don't know whether Bren is actually going to come in and join us, but she's one of the producers. Joe Mantegna, that you guys all know from CSI and from, he's Fat Tony on The Simpsons, but you know him from so many, from The Godfather, from one of my favorite movies, Searching for Bobby Fischer. So he is the executive producer of this. Jessica is the actress. And joining them is going to be Joanne Lara, because as they do this production here in Los Angeles, the ticket sales will benefit the wonderful organization Autism Works Now. So it's this wonderful full circle moment where seeing this play not only is going to help people and raise awareness about autism, but also create a money stream to help people to have jobs. It's a pretty fabulous thing. So don't go anywhere. We're going to spend the rest of the show with these fine people talking about this amazing show, Self Injurious Behavior, written and performed by Jessica Cavanagh and others. So stick with us.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bure.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's a very special day here, and we have a studio full of very special guests, the best of the best, really. Sitting right next to me is Joanne Lara. She, as you guys know, is a regular here on the show. She's the co-founder of Autism Works Now, the creator of Autism Movement Therapy, and a million other things, and such a gift to our community. But joining us here in the studio right now, Jessica Cavanagh, wonderful actress and playwright of a very important play that is about to have its premiere here, world premiere in Hollywood. It's called Self Injurious Behavior. So excited to have you here. And the fabulous, the stunning, the most wonderful Joe Mantegna is here with us. And we're so thrilled to have you. It's the first time we've had you live in the studio.
I've done something with you.
We've done
Was it-
interviews
was
with
it
you.
was it radio?
Lots of interviews. In
Yeah.
fact, I think you're really the first guest we ever interviewed on Autism Live.
Okay.
If we're really putting a fine, but
Oh.
it was we were live from a golf course.
Okay.
All
right. Yes, I do remember
Right.
that. I do remember.
But first time we've had you in our little studio,
Right.
and this we feel
It's
honored
great.
that you're here joining us.
My pleasure.
And you're joining as the executive producer of this wonderful play. So let's start by Jessica. Tell us about the play. We want to know everything, synopsis, and when people can see it here in Hollywood.
Okay, so the play, Self Injurious Behavior, I wrote it. I'm going to start at the beginning. My son, when he was 11, he had struggled for a few years at that point with incredibly bad self-injurious behaviors. He, I won't go into all the details, but it was it got to a point where the worst point was we found that he had pulled his own molar out in the middle of the night, and that was when we kind of realized, oh, we literally can't watch him 24/7. And we realized we had to do something. So we made the decision to admit him to a group home. And I almost lost my mind.
Yeah.
You know, I just felt like the worst failure of a parent, and went through a very deep depression. And I think it was either write a play or end this life, you know? Like, it was really to the point where things were, I had to get it out there somehow.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually know that it would be anything I would ever show anyone. I just started writing, and I decided to write about the worst day I could remember. And the play is actually funny, y'all. Just gonna say that right now.
Well,
But-
isn't it amazing how pain can transform, and that you took a very therapeutic way of addressing it, and now you've arrived at this thing that is helping lots of people.
Yeah, it's humbling. Like, you know, I wrote it to help myself. I wrote it to climb out of the depression that I was feeling, and something about, and I hadn't told people, even in my life, how bad things were until we had to admit him to the group home, and then I kind of was able to tell people, and people were stunned. And then I realized no one knows, like, no one knows what parents of kids on the spectrum and what kids on the spectrum are going through every day.
Yeah.
So that's when it kind of shifted for me, when I would let people read a few scenes and be like, I don't know what this is, but what do you think? And they'd be like, first of all, this is your life, and these are people I've known for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was when I was like, wow, I haven't been transparent about what my life is. I wonder how many people with kids on the spectrum are sitting at home not talking about it. So that's when I really committed to finishing the play. And it basically, synopsis-wise, am I still cool? I'm
You're cool. You're cool.
Okay. Synopsis-wise, it ended up landing that the main event of the play is admitting Benjamin, the name of the boy in the play. But the majority of the play is Summer, the mother, trying to get on with her life and trying to learn how to forgive herself. And her two sisters, after she admits Benjamin in the play, there's a few weeks where she's not allowed to see him, which is exactly the case as it was with me. And I went to stay with my sister in Portland for 3 weeks. And it was a transformative time for me, and I fell in love with Portland. And so I wrote a play, and in the play there are 3 sisters, because that's just more fun. And in the play, the 2 sisters take Summer to a Renaissance fair for the weekend to try to just get her out of herself, and she ends up experiencing her own bout of self-injurious behavior. We see that she does that to herself as well. And so the whole time she's just fighting memories and so there are flashbacks to what got them all to this point. So yeah, it's.
And you've got nothing but great press. I mean, the
It's been
buzz on the
amazing.
streets is that this is, you know, the show to see, that it's transformative, and that it's gut raw, but funny and honest and the real deal. So that's what I'm hearing. I can't wait to see it. Tell us when the performances are and how we go about getting tickets, because everybody needs to go see this.
Yes. So the performances are at Theater 68, and that's in NoHo. I do not have the address in my head, but somewhere it's on the
I
internet.
think it's like 5112 Lancashire.
5112 Lancashire.
There we go.
There it is.
North
I'm
Hollywood.
impressed
Thank you,
that
Joe
you knew that,
Mantegna.
Joe.
Right.
Isn't he amazing?
I'm like,
Good for so many things.
I'm like Google.
He is a Google.
I love it.
And we, so there is a launch event. Our very first preview is August the 30th, and that will be a talk back with Joe and myself afterwards.
And I think myself and the kids.
Yes,
right?
and you'll be moderating it, I believe. Yes. And then on September the 5th, we're very excited about this. There's going to be an invited free preview performance for any caretakers of anyone on the spectrum, for any special needs, special education teachers, for anyone working in the autism community. We'd love to have you come out for free and see the show.
So that's on September 5th, but then it actually opens on September 6th. That's
Correct.
the actual opening, and you run through the 28th?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And we left out the piece that Joanne fits into this because I love it when people decide that they're going to do something and make sure that they're helping others along the way. This is really brilliant that even when you did it in New York, it benefited a couple of different charities, and as it comes here, it's benefiting a couple of different charities, in particular Autism Works Now. And your class is going to be there working.
Absolutely. We're
and-
thrilled. We're ushering, and we have glorious pies there. So we're selling dessert and coffee during the
intermission.
The intermission, and before and after.
Talk about putting your time and your money and your effort where your mouth is, right?
Kids are thrilled.
But we haven't heard about the piece where how Joe Mantegna came to be a part of this and be the executive producer. So I think what we should do is have the audience have the treat of watching the teaser of the show. Then we'll come back and hear from Joe how he heard about this play and what motivated him to decide to be a part of all this. That's pretty high praise.
I know.
Right?
I don't know
That's
how
pretty
I got
incredible. But take a look. This is the teaser for Self Injurious Behavior.
Follow the sound of my voice! Follow the sound of my voice! Hey! This is the part where I lay down the law. We will not be constantly looking over our shoulders while we go about the business of having fun this weekend, okay? This isn't band camp. Fire truck! Off! Turn off!
It's okay. It's okay. Let's sit down.
What are you talking about? She loves him.
She loves what she wants him to be. Big boys don't do this, big boys don't do... If that kid wants to carry around a teddy bear for the rest of his godforsaken life, he should get to. Period. His world is terrifying enough without yanking away his few small comforts because she's embarrassed of him.
I can't talk to you when you're like this.
I can look like Captain Hook now.
Sure. Hey, you know what? Mommy can come with you. Lost boys are good in a fight.
Mommy, stay here. Peter Pan fights.
You don't want me to come with you?
Kiss Teddy. See you later, alligator.
Welcome back. So you've seen a little bit about what we're talking about here, self-injurious behavior. We're here with the writer and the person who performs the biggest role, Jessica Cavanagh. We're here with one of the executive producers, Joe Mantegna, and one of the beneficiaries, Joanne Lara from Autism Works Now. So we promised that we would talk a little bit about how this happened. So you're a mom in Dallas and you're therapeutically writing this play because you said it was that or Burst, right? How did you get to the point where one of the biggest stars on television is now your executive producer? I want to know everything.
No, how did this happen, Joe? How are we here?
Well, I'm a firm believer things happen for a reason in life. You know what I mean? My whole life I've always felt there's some sort of plan and things happen and you just kind of have to be open to it. In this particular instance, I mean, I've been involved with Theater 68 for quite a while, which is the theater that the show will be performed in. And Ronnie Marmo, who was the founder of it, is a dear friend of mine. And I had directed him in a play called, based on the life of Lenny Bruce, called I'm Not a Comedian, I'm Lenny Bruce. And we had done that at that theater for almost about a year. Then we took it to New York. And it had been in New York. And while it was in New York, Ronnie was the catalyst here. Ronnie saw what Jessica was doing with the play there. And, contacted me, said, Joe, this is so... And Ronnie, I commend him for that, for being sensitive to that and understand that. Because first of all, I have a child with, I don't know what the correct term is. She has autism, she's autistic, she's on the spectrum, whatever is the flavor of the month for the terminology of that, she is that. Yeah. She's 32 years old, my daughter. And so I've been in the part of that autism family world for, over 30 years, let's put it that way. So it's been that journey of, yes, your child has this thing, and it's 1 in 1,800 births, and there's very little information about it, to where we are today, which is, it's a lot more prevalent. Yeah. But thank God there's a lot of other stuff going around it, including people like Jessica, who's created a show that will kind of open up a door about it. So anyway, just to cut to the chase, Ronnie was really the catalyst to say, look, here's this play, I think this is great. Would you like to, can we produce it together? We'll do it back in California, Los Angeles at Theater 68. Joanna, who again, I had been very close to Joanne Lara and with Autism Works. Because I've also been a strong proponent of, as I said, early on, over 30 years ago, when I was first doing things like getting involved with groups first out of New York, which there was a group called NAR, the National Alliance for Autistic Research. They were doing work. Then when we moved back to California, there was CAN, Cure Autism Now. Then all of a sudden, there was another group in New York. And there was groups happening all over. Then Bob Wright and his wife from NBC, he combined the groups and it became, Autism Speaks became this huge monolith. And this is all wonderful stuff. But all of a sudden, I felt like I was being bombarded with almost like logistics and corporations and this and that, which is great. But so much of it was focused on how could we stop this? How do we cure this? How do we, it was all about the children in a way. It was almost, it reminded me of Jerry Lewis and the telethons and all kinds of things. Now, this is all great. We need that. Yes, how do we end this? But when you're a parent of a child that has now gone through childhood and is now a young adult and now is an adult and now is going into her 30s, you make that realization, You're an adult a lot more years than you're a kid. So yes, God willing, all of this focus that we're putting on curing this malady, or whatever we want to call it, that's great. But at the end of the day, what are we going to do with all those people who preceded all of that cure and who now have to live for maybe 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years? What do we do? And so my focus became more involved with that. So then when I got aware of what Joanne was doing in terms of autism work, let's try to get them jobs, let's try to get them housing, let's try to do things to give them a life. That became very important. So this was a no-brainer. People like Jessica, God bless them, because they've taken a situation that none of us want to be in. That's so whenever you hear still those things when people say, I'm glad my child has this thing in a way, because I wouldn't change a thing because I've learned so much. Bullshit.
Thank you for that.
If I could change it tonight, I'd change it. If it cost all the money in the world, whatever, I would change it. Because why wouldn't you? Yes, my daughter's she's the most purest thing in the world. She has she lacks all those abstract things like jealousy and those kinds of beautiful things. She's like this innocent flower in a way. But and yes, and life is ugly and dangerous and cruel and all that. But you know what? I would rather have her experience that than at 32 years old really just to still mainly worry about the Disney princesses and stuff like that, which is beautiful and lovely, and I embrace that, and that's my life and that's our family. But to say, oh yes, no, this is, I'm glad this happened or this is great, no, that's bullshit, So thank God that we take the situation for what it is, and we have people like Joanna and Jessica who are actually doing something, putting it out there, because it's not, as for now, it's not going to change. My daughter, she's not tomorrow night. She's not going to be this, But it's okay, and I'm happy. I love that. That people say, what's it like to have a daughter with autism? I don't know, because I don't know what it's like to have a daughter without autism. I don't know. That's my life. That's our family. And it is what it is. Everybody's got a story. But so anyway, anything to move the ball rolling, to bring attention, to make people understand that we're all got to live on this planet, and those people included, her son, my daughter. So, and they're not going to change. We learned that when we put me in school. We realized early on, you know what, the special ed, this and that, it's all interesting and good, but at the end of the day, the world's not going to change for her. She's going to have to adapt to the world. So it's difficult, but you got to kind of keep doing it. You got to keep banging on those doors, banging the walls, getting it out there. That's all I got.
That's a lot. He just took us to church.
All I got.
So, well, and always wonderful to hear a passionate parent, but there's something in particular about hearing a passionate dad, I gotta say. It's a voice that's not as heard as much in the community, and so thank you for all of that. Did you say yes to executive producing without having seen the play?
Absolutely.
Or did you go
I still haven't seen it.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding. But I saw enough. I talked to her. I saw enough. I saw the clips. I saw this and that. And Ronnie's I have such tremendous respect for him. First of all, because he wrote the play that I directed him in, which is just a wonderful piece. And so when he came to me and said, Joe, I really want to do this. This is really worth doing. I'm in. I said, okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm
That's
in.
awesome.
That was enough. Awesome. I know already. It's first of all, it's her experience. I get that. So it's going to be, I know it's great.
So what was that call like for you? Yeah.
It was a lot. Well, my favorite is when the first time I went to dinner with Ronnie, and this even idea was broached about LA being a thing. He talked to Joe on the phone. For some reason, he just had Joe on the phone, and we were at dinner, and I was just like, he's talking to Joe Mantegna on the phone. And then he put me on the phone. He handed the phone to me, and Joe and I got to talk for a minute, and it was just so surreal. I was like, what's even happening right now?
That's awesome.
But the best thing was when I finally met you in person. We were both at one of the last performances of the Lenny Bruce show in New York. I just felt an immediate comfort with you and your wife, and spoke to them, and there was just kind of the connection that you feel with people who are in this community, and it made me realize, okay, he's a person. He's a dad.
And in relation to that, God bless my wife. I mean, I just want to say that because, first of all, because Mia is a daughter as opposed to a son, there are just certain things that a father can't do. You know what I mean? Even in the raising of a child without autism, a daughter without autism, let's say. Mother to a daughter is a relationship that it is what it is. Now, of course, father to the daughter is the relationship, of course, what that is too. But the mother and the daughter, there's a special something going on there. And the fact that, my wife is as present as she is, and we've been together, I've been together 50 years. So, I mean, it's like, and I see the families that have busted up over this and stuff like that, and God, it's so difficult, and I get it. I mean, I do get it. So, I mean, whatever burdens, I don't know if you use the word burden, but whatever the difficulties that you can't help but arise and that you have to deal with, I think are even compounded for in this particular instance, for my wife, for my daughter. And so I really want to just get that out there that,
Well, your wife is extraordinary.
She
And
really
if you
is.
even think about the odds of, so you're a Hollywood family and, so the odds of staying married there, plus, having a special needs child, I'm fairly certain that you're not allowed to be married to each other anymore. It's like there's a law somewhere that says you're required to be divorced. But I've seen the two of you together. She's a remarkable woman and you have a remarkable marriage. So that's a real thing that people look at and go, wow, look at that. That's pretty amazing. And there is statistics that show that the families who do stay together through this are stronger. That that there is that sort of residual effect when you can. Yeah. That's not. I understand your story.
It is not. Yeah.
And and statistically, that's that's a part of it too. Yeah. That's part of the reality.
4 out of 5 families end in divorce.
And but amazing that you circumvented all of that. But I think that's a real testament to you and to your wife because it's got to take two.
To me, that's even more so why I have such feelings and compassion for what Jessica's done because this is her son.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And in a way, I'm old school Italian. My feeling is if you got a son, daddy's got to be really kind of present in a lot of different manifestations. Mm-hmm. And she's carrying, beyond carrying a load of, due to the situation, but then to go on and create this thing and do this, that's...
You're fierce.
That's big time.
You're fierce.
That's big time.
That is big time.
I got the Italian chin thing.
There you go. So now we haven't talked as much about the Joanne piece because when this started in New York, you got a call.
I did from Bren. Joe had asked Bren Rapp to she's an executive producer as well.
She's a producer.
She's a producer.
And said that Joe and Ronnie and you wanted to make sure that you were serving the autism community well. And so we would like for Autism Works Now and for the Doug Flutie Foundation to be recipients of the box office. And
Which
I said,
is a lovely
really,
thing.
That's amazing. I mean, who does that? It was fantastic. Right. And I said, absolutely, we're thrilled. And then Bren asked, would I send somebody in New York to a talkback? Mm-hmm. And I asked Louise, who is a 73-year-old gal with autism. And I dedicated my Autism Movement Therapy book to her. It's all about Louise, who said to me when I met her at 65, if I had had the art programs and the different programs that are available to individuals now with autism, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And we were in a room of 40 people and everyone had tears in their eyes. We were like, whoa. Mm-hmm. And she continues to advocate for the services, not only for services in speech and language and the OT and the ABA, but for the art intervention pieces for our kids, which are so important. And being tied to the theater piece means so much to me because I believe that the art intervention is a primary evidence-based intervention for our individual. Whatever they pick, if they want to paint, they want to go do yoga, if they want to do theater, they want to do music, they need access to the arts. Mm-hmm, and so I'm thrilled to be able to have my work program be aligned with them and my individuals who are older, 17 and older, who are working, and they are getting a paycheck. And the important piece, it is not volunteer work. They are getting a paycheck. They are on payroll with ADP. They get a paycheck. And ADP said, "Don't you want me to direct deposit?" I said, "Oh no, they got to get that paycheck in the mail. Yeah. They have to sign the back of it. I want them taking it to the bank. I want them opening an account if they don't have it, and an ATM card."
There we go. Mm-hmm.
So we got to teach this.
So a portion of the ticket sales in Los Angeles also go to Autism Works Now. Yes. So people need to know. And you were mentioning before that your candidates, because that's what you call them when they're studying at AWN, right, will be working at the event, being ushers, and you were also having glorious pies there?
Yes, we do. Coffee and dessert. Yeah.
Wonderful thing. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look. We're going to take a short break and show you some of the Autism Works Now program, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more update about what's going on in your life and how your child is now and some of that knit and grit of that. So take a look at this. This is Autism Works Now.
decided to start Autism Works Now as a small business because 90% of individuals with autism and related disabilities are not employed after graduating from high school. Our mission at Autism Works Now is to create job opportunities for spectrum youth and kids through awareness and education.
Vanilla swirl, chocolate cake, carrot cake, chocolate again, cappuccino, chocolate, canola.
$6 each for any pie.
Buy our glorious pies.
Welcome back to Autism Live. And so you see a little bit about that piece. The work piece is a very important piece. We're here with Joanne Lara. She is the co-founder of Autism Works Now and the founder of Autism Movement Therapy. Amazing woman and a regular here on the show. Jessica Cavanagh is here, brilliant actress and playwright. Has this hot new play that's having its world premiere in its full form in Los Angeles starting next week. And of course, the fabulous and wonderful Joe Mantegna. Can't believe that we get to have him here too. That's an extra special treat. We're all thrilled to have you here. And so we mentioned when we were at break that we're forgetting a couple of people that we have to thank here, because I know that Bren has been really important to this, how this happened. So talk a little bit about one of you about Bren's piece in this and what she has meant to this, and then we have to talk about Ronnie and his piece.
So Bren came into the picture after our Dallas run, and we asked her to help us bring a showcase to New York, and she did. And she worked her butt off, and she got us there. And honestly, that's why all of this is happening. And Ronnie, you know, Bren was also one of the producers on the Lenny Bruce show. Is that right?
She might be. I stay out of that end of the business. You know what I mean? I know she's close to Ronnie. Actually is.
She's like, yes,
I mean,
yes.
yeah, I know she. Yes, exactly right. So, but yeah,
Yes, she is a producer on the
My
Lenny
brain
Bruce
doesn't
show.
work on that.
So that's kind of how that all. So we approached Bren, and Bren was already working on Lenny Bruce, and that's just kind of how all of this came together. So Bren was kind of the catalyst for a lot of this time.
Way to go, Bren, making that happen. And then Ronnie, an amazing actor, and so we just were saying during the break he's going to be doing more performances.
Yeah, we've got three. We've got. It's almost like pop-up theater at this point. You know, we ran for almost a year at the same theater where Jessica's play is going to be, and then we moved it to New York, and we ran there for over 100 performances, I think, in New York at 2 different locations off Broadway. And now we're since it's a one-man show basically, and it's very simple in terms of the setting, we can do it that way. So to keep it fresh, because it's all him, and he wrote it, and he performs it. We do it on occasion. We'll have 3 performances next week, but we're getting ready to move it to Chicago. We had bookers come in from Chicago who've seen it, and so we had 2 theaters actually both theaters kind of wanting it. So we kind of had to make a choice. So as of right now, it looks like I think we're going to be going into the Royal George in Chicago, it looks like, which is a wonderful theater. And I'm from Chicago, so it was like, that was kind of fun for me to be able to bring the play back to the hometown.
Fabulous.
So anyway, we're getting ready to do that. But Ronnie, again, he's a special human. I mean, because it's called a Theater 68 because his group was called the 68 Cent Theater, because when he came out from New York, he had 68 cents in his pocket. And all he wanted to do was do theater. So he had 68 cents, and he found some other guys that wanted to do theater, and he started this little theater company. Now he's got this beautiful space in NoHo, in North Hollywood here, and it's just a wonderful space. I mean, it has the marquee like a movie theater, and he works tirelessly to have made it what it is. And on top of it is a playwright and an actor, and is smart enough and open enough to see other great talent when it appears. And,
Love it.
And again, like I say, things happen for a reason.
That's
and
right.
I think it's why we all got together in a way. That's why we're here.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And we promised that we would talk a little bit about how things are now. So you were in this space where you were having to place your child. And we've had a lot of moms on here talking about that. And it's, I wish we could talk about it endlessly because there's a lot that comes along with that, I understand. But you wrote a play, and now all these other things are happening as a result. Where are you now in terms of how is your son, and how is he doing, and how are you doing with how he's doing?
He's great. I mean, one of the beautiful things about this, and I don't think I could continue doing this play if this wasn't the case, but it has ended up being the best decision we ever could have made for him. I mean, he's thriving there. He went from having 5 2-hour meltdowns a day, which was the entire day, to having 1 a month is where we're at now with him. And he is happy. And he gets to stay in this wonderful place indefinitely as long as they can meet his needs. And so it's just this insanely wonderful situation for him. We went from kind of nightmare to kind of just the best thing we could imagine for him. So I'm just very lucky, and I know that's not everyone's situation. So I feel very, very grateful that that's where we're at with him.
How did you find that place? Because that's the big question that everybody says.
Yeah,
if I had a place where I knew that they could go and be okay, but the process of finding it seems to be really difficult right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was just this kind of crazy stroke of happenstance. So my ex-husband and I separated, and he moved to Louisiana. I was in Texas. And once he was officially living there, Elijah actually went to live with him for a time when we separated because I was a mess. And the behaviors were so bad. And it was to the point where physically Elijah could overpower me sometimes. So, so once he was established in Louisiana, they started seeing a doctor there, and this doctor recommended this place. And as of now that they were residing there, Elijah could go. So it's one of those crazy things where it's like if we hadn't gotten divorced, if he hadn't gotten remarried and moved to Louisiana, all of which seemed very sad at the time, ended up being the very best thing that ever could have happened for Elijah. Wow. So,
how old is he now?
He'll be 20 in October.
And is he aware of the show? Does he know about the show?
No, okay. He's not quite high enough functioning to process all of that. He's never seen me on stage. Yeah, but he's just a happy guy.
And that's what's important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what's important to me, yeah.
And Joe, is it kosher to talk about how your daughter is doing now?
Absolutely. Listen, it's funny. My daughter was born in 1987, and I was shooting the movie The Godfather in New York when she was diagnosed, because at that time, that's kind of that was early diagnosis back then.
Yeah.
But it was like she was about 2.5, and we started to realize that gee, all the other kids around her age are talking to each other, and she's kind of just kind of not even looking at us type of thing. And like I said, you got to remember back then it was a little more, not as much information out there.
Yeah.
So once. When we got that diagnosis, when the doctor suggested I think you should go see it's like whatever, the person that would help maybe diagnose what's going on here. And when he sat us down and says, well, I think what it is your daughter has autism. And it was like, you get that thing where the bowling ball hits you in the chest, and you look at each other and you go, okay, now, so you have two choices. Do you or do you like, okay, now what do we do? So, okay, you kind of recover. Now you start doing what you need to do to look into this stuff. So, bottom line, so I do the movie. The Godfather comes out, and because it was such a big movie, they had tons of press about it. And People magazine wanted to do an article on my character because I was the villain in the movie. It was like the brand new Godfather movie. It's going to be a big deal. And somehow they had gotten wind of somehow that, and so I remember in the interview, the person from People magazine said to me, listen, we had heard from some source that perhaps you have a child with autism. Is this something, can we mention this in the article? And up to that point, I really had never really, it wasn't that prevalent where you'd read about parents, especially in show business. So like I always said, by the way, here's my, in fact, if anything, you'd heard about families.
They kept it.
They kept it, you know what I mean? Like you kind of thought about, the rumor was, but you never hear about it. And I was about to give like the standard answer of like, no, I'd rather, and then I thought to myself, oh, wait a minute. And I look over and I'm thinking of my daughter who would, like, I remember how I had done this other movie prior, like a year or so before that, and she was born very premature. She was only at 1 pound